We're going to go to our next speaker right away because don't want to get off of time since Sandy did such a great job keeping on time. And our next speaker is Irma Munoz, who's the founder and president of Las Mujeres de la. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm sorry if I'm not.
A good try.
Okay. And so Irma's going to, her interest in soils is based on the fact that only 25% is of the world is solid ground because we walk on it, we grow our food on it, we live on it, play on it, and have amazing adventures on it. Besides water and air, land is vital to in our existence. Unfortunately, many of our lands are highly contaminated and we need to stop poisoning our lands and start cleaning them up. So what a wonderful statement, and it's all yours, Irma.
Okay. So
You're getting help for advancing the slides, or are you doing
yes,
it?
I think I am. I was told that I would get help. So if we can go to the next slide. And while we go to the next slide, there are a couple of things you need to know about Mujeres de la Tierra, which means women of the earth. And actually, Andy Lipkiss and Tree People were the inspiration of Mujeres de la Tierra. I was working at Tree People and started to recognize and realize that I needed to start an organization that really provided a platform for Latina women and their families. And so if you look at our logo, you'll see a tree coming out of the ground in honor of the work that and inspiration that I received from Tree People and all the folks that were there. We developed the organization to be all of our programs and our projects. We look at everything through a relevant cultural lens. And so much of our messaging, we work predominantly with the Latino immigrant community, many times monolingual Spanish speaking. So when we want to educate folks on a particular issue, we come up with something we think that will resonate with them. For example, one of the biggest issues in the neighborhoods in the Northeast LA area where we're concentrated on, the women are very concerned about the litter that they find when they're as they're walking their kids to school or going to the parks. So we developed El Demonio de la Basura, the demon of trash. And this one lady once told me, I don't understand why there's so much trash and so much litter. And so I said, I guess it rained litter last night. And the point is that litter comes from us. So you can see the Demonio de la Basura, it lights up, people love it. The devil has a really interesting cultural connection to all Latin American countries. So we're not afraid of it. We like making fun of it. We also developed the Munoz in the park. As a matter of fact, we performed one of our best performances at Tree People a year or so ago. The Munoz in the park is to educate and inform about plastics pollution and the drought and all other environmental issues of the day. And we will be talking about contaminated lands in our new script. We're launching our first season. We do beautification and restoration. Obviously, we celebrate culture from Day of the Dead. And I guess our next slide, if we can. Okay. The reason we've become very successful over time, and we are celebrating 15 years, and if you can believe that, we're quinceañeras this year, is that we've developed a list of guiding principles, and I'm only going to focus on some of them. And I can have a report sent to you that really illustrates all of our guiding principles. We engage to empower and provide tools of capacity for empowerment. We cultivate and amplify the community voices so they can speak up and speak out on their issues so that they lead them and own them. We educate and inform. We don't indoctrinate. We don't tell people what to think, what to say, what they want. They live in their neighborhoods. They know exactly what they want, how they want it, and when they want it. So my presentation was called the F Factor. And the reason for that is that what we have found is a lot of folks in our community have a lot of fear in their heart because they don't have knowledge or because they've been listening to folks that have been doing fear mongering. And what we do is that we put facts in their head using science and data. And that is what community wants. They want facts. They do not want fear tactics. They don't want to be misled. We are transparent. And like I said, we use facts, science, and data. And when I say we're transparent, if we don't know, next slide, if we don't know the answer, we tell them we don't know. And it's important to be very honest. Some of the lessons that we've learned, as I've told you, replacing fear in their hearts with facts in their heads, it's really important to listen. What you'll find is you're going to learn more from them than they can ever learn from you. They're very smart. Many of them come from agricultural backgrounds, and they come with the idea that they want to plant and grow their own vegetables, but they know that many of the soils where they live are contaminated or poisoned, as they call them, envenenados. So it's important to listen to them, because based on what they tell you, you can develop these programs, and they'll tell you what is important to them. It's important to ask the right questions. It's not important. You got to listen not only with your ears, but with your eyes and your hearts. Like if they're being reluctant and they don't really want to talk to you, you've got to calm them. You have to develop a trusting relationship. So people told us, we don't want fear tactics. Tell us the science, tell us the data. Don't expect community to come to you. We go to them. And if you can see on the left-hand side, we're at bus stops, where vendors are. We go to community organized group. On the left, that's Anahuac Youth Soccer Association. We go to beauty parlors, barber shops. We go into schools. So anywhere we can find community, we go there and talk to them. Next slide. We have worked on 2 projects along the LA River in the Northeast LA, in particular within the Tailored Yard area. And what was so amazing to me is that everybody in the community knows that those lands are contaminated. And they were very fearful, and they had such a mistrust of everyone. Governmental agencies from the local, county, and state and federal level. They didn't understand the difference between what DTSC or what DTS even meant with EPA, with the county, with BOE. That's our language. So we need to explain what that means. So when I noticed that people were really afraid and concerned and scared, literally, we decided to put together a Brownfields workshop. And that really transitions so much, where open communication started to happen. The workshop we did was all in Spanish. It was on a Friday evening at 7 p.m. and I was told I was crazy, that nobody would show up. And actually about 300 people showed up, and they brought 35 of their children. So we had something separate for the kids. We provided meals and refreshments, and we partnered with the Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board, who actually did the whole presentation in Spanish, and it was simultaneously translated into English for those English speakers, but everybody there spoke Spanish. And it was a dialogue where they asked so many questions about what they wanted. Always wanted to know about the brownfields. They wanted to know the history of the site, which is very important. They wanted to know, why is it contaminated? What is it contaminated with? And what are the contaminants that are there? Tell us what the elements are. Is it bacteria? Is it copper? Give us the scientific name and and describe it to us. How does it impact our children's health? A lot of folks get involved with the brownfield and the lands because they want to make sure that their health of their children and their families are not impacted, that it's safe to walk in that space. So here you see a workshop that we had with majority women who come. And then we always feel that it's important to take people to that space if it's safe to go into. You can't talk about a piece of land or a piece of property without walking it, feeling it under your feet, checking it out, looking at what's there. And we take them, next slide, please. So some of the considerations that we found out that we need to do is that we really need to listen to the community to understand what they need to know. But more important, they need to, what they can share and educate you, because the truth is many times they know more than you do. Most of them are highly sophisticated, come from agricultural backgrounds, and they understand the health of the soil is very important. And right now during COVID, many people want to plant gardens, want to plant their own vegetables, but are reluctant to do so until they know the health of the land, of the soil. They want to make sure that their kids will not get sick. So based on that, we have and continue to develop relevant educational workshops. We research the impacts to community health, because I told you that's of primary concern, and to environmental health. Next slide, please. So some of the things that I wanted to share with you is what my wish list is. And I say what my wish list is because for from Ms. Tatiana's presentation earlier today, she's right. It starts with education, but it's got to be through a relevant cultural lens so that people understand. You can't just translate a presentation and think that it's going to have an impact. So one of the things of my list is I'm also happen to be the chair of the Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board, which is a regulatory agency for both LA and Ventura County. And I noticed that people were really worried about contaminated lands and do they impact the LA River. So I formed a industrial task force to get to the bottom of why we have all this horrible industry poisoning our lands. And so it included cities, included Hilda Bay, NRDC, Los Angeles Waterkeeper, and members of the board. And interestingly enough, the reason it was formed is because the Metals Coalition and SA Recycling, who have recycling businesses all over the state and all over the country, said, you know what? We comply with water quality standards, but we're getting a bad rap in Sacramento. Can you help us? So we had our first meeting. Everybody was excited. At the first meeting, I found out that the only city, there are only 2 cities in Los Angeles County that requires a permit from the water board, stormwater permit from the water board, to get their business license from the city. So if a city were smart, they would ask them to get a license from us, get a permit from us, so that they understand what they can do and how they should conduct their businesses so they don't have negative impacts to water quality. By the end of the day, what we decided to do is to go to Senator Hertzberg and ask him to author the bill statewide. It passed through the Senate, it flew through the Assembly, and it was signed by the governor last November, and in January it became law. So I would suggest you look at SB 205 because now any industrial business has to get a permit from us, which is going to mean improvements, not only of water quality, but less soil contamination, because they will be fined if they do that. The other thing that in my wish list is that in the community, we are now teaching people how to get into Zoom meetings and other platforms so they can be part of neighborhood council, so they can be part of the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, or they can be part of city hall meetings, so that they can voice their opinions. And this is going to be very convenient for both the Water Board and Santa Monica Mountains that I'm also on. We have had an increase of members of the public. We even have translators because many of the folks that are joining are Spanish speakers and they want to understand what's going on. So I would encourage you to continue these Zoom meetings because it increases the level of community participation. I also would encourage you not to make assumptions of any community, community of color, poor white community, Spanish-speaking community, the Korean community. And I think that's where we get into trouble. We say, well, since they don't understand English and they're not going to understand, they know better, frankly, and they probably can, in our philosophy is that we've always learned more from community that they've learned from us. You have to rethink traditional engagement models. They're just not working, folks. It is not about translating a flyer. It's not putting it just on the website or posting it on the library. We just finished completing a workbook that is available to all of you that will show you and provide you with recommendations on the different models that are working. The community does no longer want to be told what to do, how to do it, when to do it. They don't want to be indoctrinated. They want to be part of the conversation, and they want to be part of the decision makings. And there's so many other things that I want, and it's always and. And the most important thing that I have learned is that we can't do this work by ourselves. We need scientists. So we created a relationship with the Union of Concerned Scientists. And when we needed to find a seismologist that spoke Spanish, we went to Caltech, and we did a workshop on earthquakes, and Lucy Jones was a part of it, and it was done all in Spanish. So I would encourage you, we need many of you who are listening to me. We are a very small nonprofit, but we act like we're an army of 50. And we are educating community members so that they go out and speak to their neighbors, to their comadres, to their networks, because they want to grow on healthy soil. They want the contaminated lands in which they live in and their kids play on to be healthy. And they want to understand the process from beginning to end. How did it get contaminated? How do we need to clean it up? How is it cleaned up? What is the difference between DTSC and EPA? Because the more information they know, the better they're going to be prepared for when there is a community meeting asking for their input. So on that note, I'm going to leave time for a Q&A. I want to show my appreciation for several of the speakers, including Alejandro and Ms. Tatiana, who truly understand community, because you need to have your pulse on community to be effective. The most challenging part is, how do you develop trust with community? We've been in Northeast LA area. We've been located in the Los Angeles River for 10 years. And it was till 5 years ago, people started saying, hey, because now we are part of the community. And so we stand with them by informing and educating and asking them to let us know what their concerns and their worries are. And it always goes back to community health. So if you ever want to start a conversation with most families, start with the health of their children. And then you'll get into the health of the soil and the health of their food and the health of their air. Thank you so much. And it was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Irma.
I want to thank very much Cindy Montanez and for the invitation. And I'm glad to be here part of this very important set of workshops. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. So we have a few minutes for questions. I have a couple questions that have been streaming in. So let's see here. Oh, I hit the wrong. So here's a question, and this one I believe is for Irma, but I think Andy could probably answer it too. What are your recommendations for trying to reach greater audiences in non-traditional methods? And I think specifically they were interested in how do you amplify that so it reaches out to more people than more and more people to get the conversation out at scale, not just one-on-one.
Well, we do our engagement differently. What we do is that our engagement is done by the women who work in the community, because we want to create jobs, because it is an economic factor as well. And we choose women who are leaders of organizations, formal and informal, and they become like marketing arms, educational arms. For example, we talked to like the head of the Korean church, and they introduced us to 5 or 10 people who are highly recognized, highly respected in the community. And so, because we cannot contact the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of folks that know the work that we've done. And now with COVID, we are putting together a new set of communications, because we can't really actually go out in the field because of the social distancing. And the way we're going to do that is that we are teaching women how to Zoom. We're getting them laptops and or tablets, and so that we can communicate with them, and then they go to their constituents. most women who are leaders in the community have about 100 individuals and families that they impact. And that's how we do it. We find folks that have a constituency base themselves.
Andy, did you want to add to that, or?
I was just listening and learning from Irma. I would say moving backwards, because what Irma just said laid such an important and sensitive foundation of what's needed and what works. And there's, I can add the traditional, which misses so many people, but we do also have to go to mass media to create literacy across our population. And it can't just be experts. Nobody can be left out on this. So I think it takes full spectrum, including the most inclusive communication with communities, listening, talking, and building from the ground up, but not ignoring using all media outlets, full social media and traditional media as well.
Yep.
So this is for both of you. This is from me, because being a scientist and working in this field for a very, very long time, and I think, Irma, you made a really good point about factual information, and that's what the community wants. So what are any advice you have for scientists to help with this this endeavor? Because as you know, a lot of academics are pressed for bringing in money, writing publications, getting their science, out and things like that, and not given a lot of credit for doing the community kinds of work. So if you have any advice for us, that would be great.
We communicate most easily with our family, with our peers, and we're all vulnerable, and we all can easily get hurt. And so, when we get beat up for saying things wrong, being insensitive or whatever, we tend to huddle with our crowd. And I think we all need to be both a little bolder and also a little more gentle with each other, and understand that all of this information, this extremely valuable information, is like gold, and it has to be shared. Whether it's from the science side at the highest end, and perhaps very nerdy, all the way down to the community side, it's all got to be shared, and it's all got to be translated, and we need to figure out how to do that. I think that the theme of what I was hoping to bring across with that we have to move out of this paradigm of division. We are so divided that we go into our camps for safety, maybe for licking our wounds or for arming ourselves, but this is a time to reach back out and come together and hold hands. And that takes a lot of sensitivity. It takes learning that we might get stung but not killed, and figuring out really how to hold hands through the tough times. And once we come to that foundation, then we sensitize ourselves to learn how to listen and learn how to speak. And I am learning every dang moment.
Join club. Irma,
I want to quickly just answer my perspective. First of all, scientists in my community are seen as mini gods. People want science, and that's what makes them feel comfortable. So even if you were only to have 15 minutes, the reason I like to have scientists is not only just for the information and the guidance that you can provide us and the knowledge, but to inspire the young people to study to be a scientist, or be a hydrologist, or be an anthropologist. And it's working, because the one seismologist that we brought, that I took everywhere when dealing with the Inglewood oil field and talking to them about earthquakes, he spoke to them in Spanish. And I have to tell you, you don't have to speak Spanish. You just have to have respect and good intentions and a smile, and people will warm up to you. And so I don't think that language has ever stopped people from working together. And so if you have half an hour of your time, I would love to have you talk to the women via Zoom meeting, introduce you to young people. I know that you have a lot of work and a lot of responsibilities and research and fundraising and whatnot. But I will tell you that your heart and soul will be richer when you go out and work and talk to the everyday person in the community, because they'll tell you what's happening there, and that'll make your research even more real.
Thank you. Well, I think we're going to have to end there because we need to transition into the afternoon session. But I want to again thank both Andy and Irma for fantastic presentations, great interactions here, and you know, I learned something every day, and I learned definitely something from hearing your talks. And so thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We'll continue the conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks.